Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel called Living in Hayward, Wisconsin, where we talk about all things real estate related and also just about living in Hayward. I'm Audrey Miller. I'm the broker owner of Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team. We're located right on Main Street in Hayward. By the way, if you stop in to see me there, I am usually only in the office about one day a week. Otherwise, I work from my home office. I'm out meeting with clients, showing properties and all of that. So you're more than welcome to stop in. One of our awesome agents will be there Monday through Friday, at least the majority of the time. But if you're stopping in to see me, it's pretty hit or miss without making an appointment. So just want to let you know that. But you can always go to the candy shop across the street and your visit will not be in vain because of that. So anyway, thank you for joining today. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about buyer FOPO and mistakes that buyers make, or things that buyers should be aware of to not do, I guess is the way I would say it. And at the end, I'm going to share with you a pet peeve of mine, let you into the world of real estate a little bit from the perspective of an agent. But in the meantime, I have a few pieces of information and advice for buyers if you want to kind of go about doing things, I'll say, the right way. So join me. Hopefully you can learn something from this as we maybe begin to work together as buyers. If you are interested in listing your property, I am a listing and lakefront expert, so I would be happy to help you with that as well. Thank you for being here today. All right, so mistake or FOPO number one as a buyer, and this is only addressing buyers in this video, wanting to look at homes without a pre-approval letter or proof of funds. A lot of times buyers will say, oh, I just want to see what's out there. I want to find the house that I like, and then I'll get my pre-approval or get my proof of funds. I will tell you, in my years of experience, that is code for I don't know what I can afford, and I have a reason I'm putting off getting a pre-approval letter, or I don't have the proof of funds available at this time. So any experienced agent will inquire whether you've been pre-approved, provide you with some lender recommendations. It is definitely getting the cart before the horse to go look at property when you don't know your budget and you don't know if you can even get a loan for the property. It's also important to know what type of loan you're qualified for, as that may change which properties are a good fit for your loan. So there's just so many reasons to take that step before going and looking at properties. Otherwise, you are wasting your time and you are wasting your agent's time. It's kind of like if you'd show up for the ceremony at your wedding, but nobody has asked someone to marry them. That's kind of how it is when you want to go look at property without having the financial piece of it in place. So that is the first mistake buyers tend to make, and something that experienced real estate agent will guide you on if you do contact someone to look at properties before you have the financial piece in place. FOPO, or mistake number two, is thinking you know more about the market than your experienced real estate agent. And I'm not saying this just because I'm an agent, but sometimes, I feel like real estate is the profession where people hire you because you're the professional and then tend to not listen to your advice. Even though, like for myself, I'm doing this every day. I'm working with buyers every day. I'm working with sellers every day. So the information that I have to provide is pretty helpful. So if I guide you in something, or I say you might want to do this or that, obviously based upon what is important to you and what your expectations are in the situation. But I find that pretty often people still kind of ignore the advice and have their own ideas of how to do things. And that's totally fine. I will do whatever my client tells me to do, but I'm here as a resource. So take advantage of that and pay attention to what an experienced agent can bring to the table for you. They're going to be able to guide you in what is going to likely get you to the outcome that you want. So paying attention to that is just a good idea. And I know there's all personality types and, people who maybe are set in their ways, and that's all good. I understand this is an opinion type of thing a lot of times, but the experience when a buyer and seller typically purchase a property or sell a property every 7 to 8 years on average, but then you're working alongside an agent who does many, many transactions per year. There's just a level of experience there that you can tap into, and it can be helpful to you. All right, mistake number three is wanting to negotiate on the purchase price simply for the sake of negotiating or feeling like you got a deal. So let's say a property is priced at $450,000 and you come in with an offer at $440,000. So this is such a negligible amount in the scope of things. You want the property, property, you want to get it, you want to end up with it, you love it, you agree that this is the place you want to purchase. Why try to save $10,000? It's a psychological thing most times, simply for the sake of feeling like you didn't pay full price. And here's the other part of this that makes it even more critical. How was the property priced to begin with? So ask your agent to run some comps for you, give you an idea. Was this property coming to the market too high, too low, or right where it should be? That should impact what you offer much more than what the list price was. People tend to look at the list price as the actual worth of the property, or kind of as the Bible on what the property is worth. When in reality, people can ask whatever they want for a property. Sometimes they ask too much. That's probably the most common thing. Sometimes they are right where they should be. Sometimes they're too low. And then you may have to say, I'm going to offer $35,000 more or $40,000 more because that's where it should have been priced to begin with, or it's a multiple offer situation. All of these things impact what you decide to offer, but to just undercut the sale price for the purpose of feeling like you didn't pay a full price is just something that will likely backfire, and you're going to be left thinking, wow, I would have rather paid what they were asking and ended up with the property than trying to save half of 1% or 1% off the purchase price. So that's just a piece of advice to consider. It's not wrong to pay full price if it was priced fairly to begin with, or maybe even to go above full asking if it was priced under. Now, if it's priced significantly over fair market value and you kind of are ambivalent about whether you want to end up with the property or not, or you only want to end up with it if you can pay less for it, then that makes total sense. So again, these are things that, we can discuss and I can help to guide you on. All right, buyer faux pas number 4 is do not contact more than one agent regarding the same property. This creates a lot of confusion. It causes issue with compensation for the agents that are involved. It creates tensions. First of all, it's best to typically work with one agent who can learn what you're looking for and help you through the process no matter which property you're interested in. As you know, we now have to sign written agreements with buyers. In my practice, that would be a buyer agency the high majority of the time. So then we're working together. I'm your point of contact no matter what. Now, if you haven't chosen an agent yet and you want to contact the listing agent, or you want to call some agent about a property, that's fine. But please don't contact more than one agent about the same property. And once you've signed a buyer agency with an agent that you like, know, and trust, then use them as your point of contact for any property that's on the market. And I know a lot of times this is just ignorance on the part of buyers. They don't understand how it works. I was the same way before I was an agent. So that's why I'm giving you this advice. In fact, my dear friend Terry Heath, who was my broker and my friend before I ever became an agent, I was looking for a house about 7-8 years ago. And I had looked at numerous houses with her, hadn't found the right one. And one day I saw a property online. I wasn't sure if I was interested or not, but I was like, oh, I don't want to bother Terry. I know she's so busy. I feel bad. She's been showing me these houses. And I called the listing agent. And of course, the listing agent wasn't aware that I was already working with Terry. Back in those days, you didn't have to have the written agreement. So we didn't have a buyer agency sign, but I was extremely loyal to Terry. And yet I called this other agent unknowingly, creating a big problem for Terry. If I had purchased that property, Terry would have had to give some of her compensation to the other agent for showing it. So I made the same mistake before I was an agent, understood how it all flows through. So that's why I'm giving you this advice to try to make things more smooth for you as a buyer. All right, buyer faux pas number 5 is contacting the seller directly, whether before or after you are under contract. There's a reason that you hired an agent. There's a reason that the seller hired an agent. There's a reason to let the professionals handle the conversations between buyer and seller. First of all, we're able to keep emotion out of it. Most of the time, if you have a professional, experienced agent, they're able to negotiate and, talk between parties without people getting their emotions involved, since it is a big purchase and buyers and sellers often have a lot of thoughts, feelings, and emotions around the process. That's one reason. Another is that as soon as the buyer and seller talk with each other and the agent is not part of that conversation, if later there is a discrepancy, it's a he said, she said situation, and we have no idea what actually transpired. I have had situations go very sideways. Sometimes they've been fine when a buyer and seller were in contact. Sometimes buyers and sellers don't heed their agent's advice about this, and there's nothing that we can really do. But please go through your agent, whether you're the buyer or the seller. Please do not try to directly contact the seller or the buyer. I'm talking to buyers here. So please do not try to directly contact the seller. This is for your own good. It's not because agents are control freaks or we think we have to, be in charge of everything. It's because we are here to help you, and we have been through the situation where misunderstandings happen and things start to go sideways, and none of us want that to happen. So that's the reason for it. And then faux pas number 6 is regarding driving into or walking around a property without an agent. So just because it's listed does not make this home, cabin, piece of vacant land, public property. Just because someone is selling, it is not a free-for-all. I know people do this with vacant land sometimes, and that seems a little more understandable, although still not allowable, but it is a little more understandable even though you're still trespassing. But I had a seller this summer who happened to have cameras on his property, and this was a lakefront property and a cabin and a garage, and he had probably in the course of a month no less than 15 or 20 different people or groups of people who came to the property, got out, walked around, looked around the exterior of the cabin, went down to the lake, stood there talking for 10-15 minutes. I was appalled. I don't know why a buyer would think that because something is on the market, it becomes property that they can just walk on and explore without an agent. Everyone knows there's protocol and a process. If you want to go see a property, you contact an agent, you schedule a showing, the agent lets the seller know somebody's going to be there, the seller approves that, and then you go look at the property. Now, can you drive by on the road slowly? Absolutely. Could you park on the public road on the shoulder and stand and look at the property from the road? Absolutely. Anything beyond that is trespassing, and I hope that a lot of people listen to this and discontinue this practice. It's very invasive to a seller's property, and I can tell you that almost any seller is not comfortable with this. So just something to keep in mind, not a public property just because there's a for sale sign at the end of the driveway. And then I'll tell you about my pet peeve as a buyer's agent, and this is maybe it's kind of funny, but it's something that when you're on the real estate agent side of things, you just get so tired of. My pet peeve is the question from a buyer: why is the seller selling? So first of all, what difference does it make? There's only about 5 reasons why people sell. They are moving to be closer to family, they have a job change, they need to upsize or downsize, they are getting to where they're, too elderly to be able to maintain 2 properties, because a lot of our properties we sell in this area are second homes. These are the reasons 90% of people sell. And here's the thing, I don't know what it matters. I think buyers are trying to ascertain the seller's level of motivation based upon why they're selling, or they're trying to find out if there's some issue with the property. Well, first of all, to me, days on market is a much better indication of a seller's probable level of motivation versus why they're selling. Someone could be selling for any of these reasons I mentioned and be more or less motivated in terms of price. Secondly, do you really think that if there's something going on with the property, like, oh my gosh, the seller is in a feud with the neighbor and the neighbor's a jerk and they can't get along, or, something happened at the property that they want to move away, as long as it's not a defect with the property, which a seller is required to disclose on the real estate condition report, they're not going to tell you that's the reason anyway. They're going to have a different reason. So it's all hearsay. It's kind of private information that the seller, their reasons for moving. And it's, in my opinion, irrelevant. Also, a lot of times a buyer's agent doesn't even know the answer to that. So if you're working with me, if you could possibly refrain from saying, why is the seller selling? My answer a lot of times, and it might come off a little bit flippant, I just say, I guess it was the right time for them, because that really is the answer. And you can feel free to keep asking me. I'll probably either say that or I'll say, I really don't know. But it just is one of those things I wish buyers wouldn't ask. And I'd be curious as a buyer, what information you feel you are obtaining by learning that. So if I say, oh, they're moving to be closer to family, they had a grandchild, they want to live and be closer to the grandchild. That's a common reason for somebody who is maybe in their 50s or 60s. What difference does that make? I guess it's just curiosity. I don't know, but pet peeve, just so you know. And maybe I've been an agent a little too long. I shouldn't have developed any pet peeves, but you ask any person who's a human and who's an agent, they'll have a few of those to share. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned something from this about the do's and don'ts of being a buyer in the real estate market in northern Wisconsin. If you're interested in looking for a property, even after I gave you all these, pieces of information, please feel free to reach out. If you're looking to sell, if you just want to chat with general questions, etc., I'm here and I'm available. I'm a full-time 24/7 agent. I try to get a little free time now and then, but texting, emailing, or calling me, my contact information is on the screen here. Feel free to like, subscribe, share my channel with somebody else that you might think would find it helpful, and I'll see you next time.